Hello, everyone. Welcome to March. Welcome to the end of March, and welcome to another Whiskey Me chat, really. Apologies for this light. Let me try and get rid of that. That's quite bright. Two very, very interesting brands today from the world of single malts and from the world of blending. You all have your packs in front of you, so hopefully you should all be taking those up and cracking them open, getting them poured into 2 glasses, or 1 if you just have the 1. We've got some people coming in already. Hello, Miles. Hello. I think I saw 4 people waiting to get into this, so let's see if they turn up. If not, happy to bring in the first of our 2 esteemed guests, Andrew Ferguson, if he's kicking around. You there, Andrew?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Phil.
Hello, Andrew. Well, we go back quite a bit, don't we? From the days of Loch Fyne and the whiskey shop and many things, and now we have in front of us some rather wonderful whiskey from the distillery that you work for, and the company you work for.
Yes, a very exciting one. A very exciting expression that's just come out. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago it's been out, so it's very, very new.
It is very new indeed. The packaging's catching many people's eyes in the shop, which is nice. It's got that beautiful kind of yellowish baked gold label. But for those of us that are just sort of coming into the chat, we like to do this a little bit like a brief history of the brand and that kind of thing. So relatively small distillery with SPEY. I think you guys are producing, or were producing, 600,000 litres-ish.
Yeah, roughly between that and I think the maximum capacity if we went full steam was about 1 million. But yeah, I think it was in between that 600 and 1 million, but I'm not exactly sure.
Relatively small, you're not trying to like go crazy with the millions and millions of litres. And then the distillery itself's got like a bit of a strange development history, some of which is on the back of the card that you guys should have with you for the first release. But like a brief overview of that, the land was purchased in 1962. And then from 1967 to 87, the distillery took 20 years to hand build by 2 folks, the founder and a stonemason called Alex, I believe. And then another 3 years later, in 1990, I think the spirit ran through the stills for the first time on Christmas Day, 1990.
Yes.
I wonder if there's any sort of connection with like Christmas Day and first distillation runs, because I know Glenfiddich have done that famously in the past and all that kind of thing. I wonder if it's just a day to crack on with distillation. Maybe it's a little bit easier on Christmas Day or something. And you have a huge array of, products. Like we've talked a lot personally and in the shop about the Trilogia, your peated sort of port release, and just recently you brought out this release we'll be trying tonight, the Chairman's PX, as well as a 12-year-old as well, which is one of the most stunning shades of ruby I've ever seen in a bottle. But here we have it. Hopefully everyone has it poured. We've got like a nice selection of people kicking around in the comments now. Should be in your glasses here, folks. But yeah, Andrew, if you want to talk us through this and what it is and how it's sort of come around, I'm sure the people can't wait to hear.
So yeah, you mentioned the distillery there, and I think it's probably better to split into 2 stories. You've got the distillery story. So Speyside Distillery, as you said, started distilling in 1990 and just stopped distilling late last year. So that's the sort of Speyside Distillery story. And SPEY, the brand, started off as a bottler in the mid-90s in Asia, and then acquired the distillery in 2012, and we owned it until it's been now closed, or it's now in decommissioning. So yes, people don't quite get the story, but basically, if you break it into 2 stories, it makes it a bit simpler. So the brand, will continue. SPEY, the brand, will continue after the distillery closes, but Speyside Distillery is now no more. It's officially by the SWA a lost distillery. So from there, so the whiskey we're trying tonight is the Chairman's Choice PX, which is a reimagining of our original whiskey back in the time when we were just a bottler. So one of our first releases about 30 years ago was Chairman's Choice, and it was somebody else's distillery we used, but it's the same style, light, easy drinking, and that kind of sherry influence, but not heavy sherry, not these sherry monsters you get these days. It's very much more delicate. This is an old school recipe. And we feel as though we're reimagining it and bringing it back, and we think it's a great kind of style of whiskey that's kind of been a bit lost in the extremes. There's so many extreme whiskies these days. This is much simpler whiskey, very very old school, what people first enjoyed about whiskey. It's that light, sweet, easy drinking, not offensive at all, pour, drink, enjoy. For the people who are new to whiskey, it's a really good first step. And the people who are used to whiskey, it's just like an old friend. So yeah, we think it's a great whiskey. But yeah, essentially it's our flagship whiskey, but it's reimagined. So it's just been released, as I said, 2-3 weeks ago. And it's a global release. So it'll be all over the world. And I think your shop in Manchester's probably got a couple of bottles, as you mentioned. And it's also for sale in Asia. And we're looking to release it in Europe, I think, in a couple of weeks' time. So it should be all over the place. So, yeah, very, very striking packaging.
Yeah.
And
sadly, I was meant to bring one of the boxes from the shop to showcase today, but it's been a bit of a hectically good, busy day in the shop, so I forgot that as I left. So I do apologise. But
no, that's fine. I think I'm the same. I've got the whiskey here, so I've got whiskey in the glass, but it was only a sample bottle. I didn't have the official bottling. So I thought
I'm sure we'll be able to throw some pictures or something in the chat for later if people want to see it. But yeah, I mean, it's got the. I mean, it's called SPEY. It's made in Speyside. It's got that quintessential. I mean, the PX finish obviously sings on this thing. It's the notes on the little bottles are like pear and marmalade and dark chocolate, and it just has this really driven, slightly bitter citrus thing. So I get that Seville orange marmalade. I get the dark chocolate, but it's just really welcoming, like most of your range. And I know the further up in the age statements you guys go, especially with the 15 and the 18, it does get more into that sort of big sherry, very powerful, still balanced and light, but you can still just super turbocharged sherry flavor profiles. I do have a question for you, Andrew, from the chat, which is from Bob. What's happening with the stock of Speyside whiskey when it closes?
So our whiskey. So we've got lots of whiskey in barrels just now. So the brand SPEY will continue while we go and relocate. We're going to build a new distillery quite close to where we are just now. But if you're a lover of the brand, you won't notice a difference. We still whiskey from Speyside Distillery for the next 10 years, and 10 years' time might see a small bump in the road but our job is to manage that lack of production for now, sort of roughly in 10 years' time or whatever, 15 years' time. So I would say if you're a fan of SPEY, don't worry, we've got lots of whiskey, lots of ideas of what different expressions. So I think if that's the question, I think hopefully I'm not too sure if I've answered the right.
No, for sure. I think you guys still have stock to produce for the next however many years you need to. It's just building a new distillery that takes time. I imagine you're moving the stills down the road on huge trucks to get them relocated and that sort of thing. So
I think it's already been done, as far as I know. I'm not up north, but yeah, I believe that most of the decommissioning's already been done. So I think we stopped distilling sort of November 2024, and I think we're pretty close to it being just a sort of empty shell just now. So all the machinery is either going to go into storage, waiting for the new distillery, or it's going to get refurbished before it goes in storage, before it goes to the new distillery. Because I think the pot stills have been in for a while, and they probably need a bit of TLC. To get
I was going to say a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of care.
Yep, definitely. I don't know the exact details, but yes, a bit of TLC definitely to. And people always ask, is it going to be the same whiskey? And we're going to try and recreate the whiskey as much as we can, but it's never going to be identical because it's just, there's always small changes.
Yeah.
Even though we're using the same machinery. Yeah, I'm even for 90 to 95% the same, but you never quite get the same. So
yeah, that's always a tricky thing. Every sort of distillery's got its own internal microclimate and everything that's kind of going on. So that's always difficult to recreate. A couple more comments coming in. Very light PX, very nice dram. I've tried the Fumare, the 10, and the Tutina, but I like this one the best. That's from Henry. And I should say, you guys do have a huge selection of peated and unpeated stocks, aged in loads of different cask types. So if you're trying this at home and you are enjoying it, as you should, because we've just had a 16-degree sunny day in Manchester, so I'm not particularly used to that. It's kind of the perfect whiskey for that day. It's crisp, it's light, still got depth of flavor. But if you are into your smoky stuff, the folks at SPEY have got quite a depth of range of crazy things. And they released a bottle last year called the Trilogia, which was particularly fun. I managed to get my hands on one of those. It was a limited run of about 6,000 bottles, but you can still find it if you're into your peat and your port. It's quite a nice thing to have. But
just on Henry's comment there, basically he's nailed I would say we do 4 core styles of whiskey. The one you're drinking tonight, the Chairman's Choice PX, I call it a sort of sherry influence. Trittina, the bourbon influence. The Tenney's, the port influence. And the Famari's, the peated version. So that's the 4 main strands, and everything we do comes from usually from those 4 strands. And Trilogia, as you mentioned, is using 3 of the 4 strands together to make quite a unique whiskey. Yeah, it's one of those ones that's like, if you've not tried it, it's kind of fruity, port-like at the start, and then finishes off like a smoky whiskey. But it's such a gradual change in the palate. It's a fantastic whiskey. I would say Chairman's Choice PX, the one you're trying tonight, is more of a easy drinker. There's nothing too extravagant or extreme about it. Well, the Trilogy is actually I would say for a core range product, it's quite a challenging whiskey because it does have a lot of different layers and different flavours. So for such a small distillery, we have quite a nimble range. I always say we're quite nimble. We can make quite a lot of different styles, which some other sort of distilleries in Speyside specifically have one style, but they do it very well, don't get me wrong, but they do one style, and that's, that distillery means that kind of whiskey. But with Speyside, you never really know what we're going to sort of create. But I always think, it's going to be light and floral and high quality. I always think that. But then from there, we can go in different directions. And I think that's half the fun of my job, is the range we have is quite large for such a small distillery.
Yeah, considering you guys can produce 1 million, but with 600,000 litres in now a decommissioned, soon to be rebuilt distillery, to have all of these sort of feathers to your bow is a pretty impressive thing, to be able to just pull out these flavour profiles, especially when it comes to like vatting different things. I was going to say blended, but that's for the next conversation with Peter. But yeah, Bob comes in again. He loved the Trittina and the 10A, sorry. This one is lovely too. Only 40%, but still nice and easy going. Loads of flavour profile. And the more I smell it, the more it does just remind me of like breakfast martinis, loads of like orange marmalade and that sort of stuff.
I just think 40% as well. So people are, I think in the last few years it's been stronger and stronger whiskies that have come out in the market. I think it's just good to have a good quality 40% whiskey, because I think people have started to think 40% means it's like an inferior whiskey, but actually you can make some brilliant whiskey at 40%, and it's just I feel as though the whiskey industry goes in cycles. So it goes in extremes and it comes all the way back and then round. So I think we are, this particular whiskey is particularly, I think it's old school, but been modernised. I think it can tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. And I would say, don't let if you're like a cask strength drinker or like a high ABV drinker, don't let the ABV put you off, because this is a really nice drinking whiskey. And then,
no, I do agree with you. It's one of those things where you can kind of look at your own whiskey collection. And sometimes, yeah, you want 50% cask strength or that kind of thing. But every now and then, I just want something that's 40%, just because it's easy drinking. It's got fruitiness typically to it. It's flavorful. You think about Jameson's and Johnny Walker Black Label and this, and, it's just one of those things where you can just reach for it. I think the new phrase going around the industry is, play and pour whiskies. And with this, you can certainly just pick it up, pour it, big group of friends, family. You don't necessarily have to think too much about it. It's just like it does what it says on the label, which is.
I didn't realize that's the phrase. That's exactly what this is. Play and pour for me, but I think it's got enough sort of features about it to keep a more experienced drinker interested as well. But yeah, essentially, that is the name of the game, is to get something that you can pour it blindly to somebody, whiskey drinker or non-whiskey drinker, and they enjoy it. And I think Chairman's Choice PX does that. So yeah, we are very, very happy with it, and as I say, the packaging helps, the price point helps, but yeah, it's it's a very accessible whiskey, and that was the idea when we sort of tried to reimagine it. We need liquid to people to try it, so it's going to be good quality, but we hope a lot of people try it. And this Whiskey Me initiative is fantastic. So I don't know how many people are trying it in the last couple of weeks because of this, but it's fantastic. And I think, I'm positive it's going to be quite a good response.
Apologies, I just need to let my dog back in. Come on. There you go. So a couple more questions for you, Andrew, before we finish off. Everyone's loving it, very enjoyable. It's going on my bucket list to purchase. I really get the marmalade notes. I wasn't expecting so much toffee on the finish. And then Bob with another question. Will there be a new name for the distillery, or is it just going to continue to be SPEY?
No, Speyside Distillery is a lost distillery name, so
Okay.
we can't. I don't think we can use it. And I think there is a name, but they haven't told me, because then I'll tell you. So,
Okay. Under wraps. Under
I
wraps.
think it's under wraps.
Yeah.
They won't tell me enough. But yeah, I think it has been. I think it will be called something different. I'm not too sure. I think. Yeah, I've had some guesses, but I've been told I've been wrong for all my guesses. So, yeah,
Oh, that's fine.
put your
That's
guesses in the comments. But
yeah, please throw your guesses in the comments, and in a couple of months' time, we'll see who's right. But thank you for that, Andrew. Obviously,
somebody mentioned the finish as well. I think the finish is superb in this whiskey. I have to say, sometimes the finishes on it's like, I don't know how to put this without getting banned from the internet, but there's some distillery or some styles of whiskey where 40% whiskey it dies away to nothing. It's kind of like the finish is not that impressive. But I feel as though for this whiskey, the finish is really impressive for 40% whiskey. It lasts a long time. It's just such a lovely aftertaste. So yeah, I would say, yeah, one of the major issues with Speyside whiskies as a region generally is trying to avoid that kind of potential being so easy drinking that it's almost bland. Well, I think we can avoid that. So I think we're interested enough, but also still easy enough to drink. So yeah, it's a fine balancing act, but yeah, I think it's great. So
no, I think everyone is agreeing with you for that for sure, Andrew. Yeah, wonderful whiskey. A lot to chew on with that one. But we will see you again in 15 minutes. And for those of you who want to drink a little bit of water in between, or have like a little dark chocolate break or something, we can now introduce Peter from Woven. But we'll see you soon, Andrew, in a couple of minutes. And my oh my, maybe history that doesn't stretch as far back as like 1962, but we have a lot of questions for you, Peter, in many different ways. We had the brand ambassador for the Cotswolds on last month, and I believe you two live quite close to each other.
Oh, Rob, yeah.
Yes.
So my business partner lives quite close to him. Yeah.
My mistake. I've got that wrong.
No, you're
you certainly mentioned someone from Woven, but I mistakenly took it for you, so that's my mistake. But you all have this other packet now, and whiskies from Woven, blended whiskies from Woven. You guys picked up a couple of awards at the Whiskey Awards last night.
Yes,
in London.
I've just hot-tailed it back up north, so I've just got home about half an hour ago.
That's a long, intense night and a very long journey to say itself. But yeah, I've got like 6-7 questions lined up for you, Pete. So we'll try and keep this as together as we can. But before we kind of dive into those, would you like to explain a little bit about what Hemispheres is for the people?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that with blending, it's for me, it's kind of the most creative aspect within the whole of the whiskey making process. And one thing that we're really excited about is that all of the countries that drink whiskey now make incredible whiskey, and being able to take flavors from around the world that are unique to a sense of place or with terroir or with an ingredient that's from there that I'm not able to get in Scotch or in Irish or American, being able to blend that in as a real flavor, like focal point within any whiskey, is a really exciting thing. And so Hemispheres is it's actually a New Zealand single malt from a husband and wife team, Thompson, Matt and Rachel Thompson in Auckland, who smoke their malt using manuka wood. And so manuka honey is like this medicinal, amazing honey that's beautiful and cures everything. But the wood itself is almost like a gorse bush, very dense and resinous. And when they smoke their malt using it, it gives off this incredible sort of, it throws off aromas, definitely off sort of clove oil, orange oil, coconut oil, and then comes through really powerfully on the palate with sort of this intense orange clove spice, but then smoke. And then when we're blending that with a beautiful grain from North British, which is like custard cream and brill cream together, so that slightly brill cream kind of intensifies the esters. It increases the sort of the rum notes coming through. The custardy vanilla kind of lays down this beautiful base background, and together you get this incredible harmony of sort of Scotch and New Zealand whiskey that has never been done before. Is a really exciting sort of quite a minimal blend, but really cool. I want to try some.
No, please do. Yeah. I mean, you've already sort of hit on quite a few of the questions that we've sort of briefed for this, and I know you guys, purely from just browsing through your website and subscribing to it and like seeing just the layout and the messaging and the images, this idea of new thinking within blending. I don't like to say it anymore because I think it's a little bit old school as a thought, but I think blends, especially with the power of like blended malts in the last couple of years, the word is becoming sort of less obtuse to people, and it's becoming much more friendly compared to what it used to be, which is a wonderful thing to see from a retail perspective, because we've all tried some brilliant blended whiskies in the world. So it's worth bringing this, and then in come you guys with this Manuka wood smoked single malt mixed with classic, as you said, custardy, biscuity North British grain. And it just delivers these very different flavor points and a very unique piece of packaging as well. That kind of beautiful, dark, almost like apothecary kind of bottle that you guys have with the really tiny lid. It's quite an impressive thing to look at. So this new thinking for blending and not taking over from where Compass Box were, but certainly fitting into that kind of Venn diagram of artistic, interesting, thoughtful blended whiskies, I think is something which people are really taking note of now. Certainly when we have them on display in the shop, they're just instantly like, what's that? And that's one of the most beautiful things I think any brand can have. So I love this new thinking approach. And this is like a really sort of silly question, I suppose, but because you've already hit on it quite a bit, but what do you think is like exciting about Woven? Because the people that I know you've hired over the last couple of years, like big personalities, very charming people who are like sales managers and like advocacy people, and like they really kind of hook you in purely based on their own natural charisma in so many different ways. And I'm just kind of thinking like, what is it you think that people view as exciting about Woven?
Well, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, because I think that it's something that we think about all the time, and so I could probably go very, very deep into it. But I think, initially people look at the aesthetics of Woven and they see a new type of whiskey, something that hasn't been really represented before. I mean, Duncan, Nick, and myself who founded the business, we're from quite a sort of arts and creative background. I studied sculpture at university, and my friendship groups are, mainly artists, designers, and chefs and people around sort of that field. And although we're Scottish and live up here, we spend very little time actually in the glens with the fire and the dog. But what we do spend a lot of time is in really lovely spaces and restaurants with friends. And cracking open a bottle of whiskey to be able to share that between us is something that we love. And so we wanted to bring an aesthetic and a brand into that space first of all. But then from a liquid perspective, we see blending as being, like I say, the most creative aspect of all of whiskey, because we're able to create whiskey by design. And that's really a statement just to dwell on for a second, because at its core as a single malt is the alchemy and artistry between science and philosophy and place and time and understanding and people and all these things. But we're able to take those and we're able to put them together with other people that are doing amazing things in terms of flavor and create something that we hope is greater than the sum of its parts. And so I guess you've got this historical piece where you go, well, we're trying to bring blending back, trying to make it accessible and great and tell the stories around it. But from a liquid level, we're trying to make something that hasn't been done before, new flavors, new techniques, being able to do experiments, being able to run 40 bottles of something because we had an idea that would be really fun, or being able to speak to a distillery in New Zealand that does something in their garden shed that nobody's done before by smoking using Manuka wood, and going, well, can we use that as a core flavor in one of our whiskies? That's going to be really fun and something that I think nobody's done before. And so, sorry, long-winded answer to a very simple question, but I think that we're trying to genuinely bring new thinking into whiskey, and we want to be part of the, even if it's just a footnote, but we want to be part of the total whiskey story. I
think you guys have already been going for 4 or 5 years at this point. I always forget if it was 2020 or 2021, but I think you're certainly more than a footnote at this point, purely based on this whiskey alone. But when it comes to, you've already again touched on it a little bit, that approach to blending, the hemispheres I have a full bottle of over there, but well, not full, but a bottle. And then it's the other release you have, whose name I unfortunately forget. It's the white label one, which is a blend.
We've got Scuba blend.
Yeah, the American, Japanese, German, and what's the other grain in it that I forget?
So essentially, we looked at some of the most amazing distilleries across the world and looked at their key attributes. So we take spicy and sweet, high rye bourbon and a sour mash from America, and then layer over the most incredible, smooth, easygoing, velvety Irish single grain from it's like Old Cooley, essentially. Don't tell me I said that. We're not live. And then about 6 different whiskies from Scotland that are all towards sort of the pear, apple, plum. So that really nice sort of kind of like tart fruit. And then a little bit of Japanese whiskey that kind of harmonizes everything, but then we add in some really funky, weird, silagey, odd little whiskies from Germany and England as well. So we've got 5 different countries, and the idea is to have the sweetness and spice, smoothness, fruitiness, funk, and then just all together. And it's quite a good little whiskey. It's a nice one.
Yeah, that one I'm yet to try. As soon as I read the bottle of the hemisphere, it kind of occupied me a little bit too much, because I've worked in whiskey for quite a long time, and that was a flavor profile and certainly an ingredient I'd never heard of. Yeah. So instantly it was just like, okay, I need this, just to see how that kind of works in the collection as like a library, like a different flavor thing within a library of flavor. But when it comes to this blending approach, and whether it's this one, and how you come around sourcing a Manuka wood smoked single malt from New Zealand, or finding this like ancient Irish grain style and these sort of funkier, more silagey German whiskies, like what is the approach to blending? Like when you guys sit in a room and kind of think, okay, well, we've got this, it does that, we have this, it does that. Are you always looking for something like deliberately different, or just how you can put a twist on something and make it more of like a woven feel? No,
not at all. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, my background isn't in blending. I've been doing it since we started Woven. I was a bartender initially, and learned to balance drinks, and now do that professionally. But I took quite an approach that I still use now, which is to essentially build a base of a grain and a malt that I think works together, and test different iterations, different percentages to understand what the balance is. I try to blend texture over flavor, if that makes sense. I think that the flavor follows texture. So if you're able to lead a whiskey so you get a softness in it, whether that's through alcohol, whether that's through the percentages of your grain and malts, whatever it is, I try to sort of maximize the texture in the mouth more than anything else, and then the flavor follows. But I look for sort of components that I think will work well together in various different guises. So I've learned that you build a base and then you layer on top of it, and you layer and layer and layer flavors to be able to create sort of a blend that has texture, that has clarity. You know, I want that top note to be something that people are able to agree is a thing, and then balance, because what I don't want in a glass is 6 or 7 whiskeys competing against each other. I want something that is harmonious and balanced and beautiful in its own right.
I mean, we can certainly agree with that top note for sure. I was struggling to put. I've owned the bottle of Hemisphere for about sort of a month and a half-ish now, and I've been struggling to figure out what it was. But as soon as you said coconut oil, I was like, oh, yeah, that's what that is. Reminds me of just like making curries and things, and like having that super floral, like exotic top note to everything, and it kind of flies around the place. And power of persuasion in this industry. As soon as you say something, it's like, oh, there it is. I
know, and I apologize. I don't mean to do that.
No. It's filled in a blank in my head, which was annoying me for a month and a bit, so that's quite good. And again, with this, in a classic way, you're combining a grain and a malt, as most blenders would, and then working with those different iterations of style. Obviously, we've got a very unique flavor in front of us tonight, something which I agree most people in this chat wouldn't have tried in any way at all until now, maybe. And then you've got this incredible super blend. Is there like a thought process that you sit down with yourselves as blenders, or with the whiskey community within Edinburgh and your like colleagues and that kind of thing, and think, hey, what kind of flavor-driven profile have we not necessarily hit on yet? Is there something that people really want that we can give them? Are there any sort of like experimental things you guys have going on now where it's like, this not necessarily will like rock the world or change it, but you've never tried anything like this again?
Yeah, I mean, so we also have a third whiskey within our core, which is homemade, and that's a love letter to the old style of Leith blends where we're based. So think about Bailey and Kiljarvey, or that 69 from the 60s and 70s, where it's malt driven, very harmonious. The oak influence is pretty big, but it's kind of sherry, Madeira, port coming through, as opposed to being sort of expert, although the bases. And that's a really, really popular one because it's kind of what a great blended Scotch can be. So we have homemade, hemispheres, and super blend in this sort of this trilogy that works really well. But then we do a lot of experimental stuff as well, and we call them our experience range, or even smaller batches, our W project. One experiment, trying to do something in the lab and then releasing it, see what people think. For example, right now, I'm working on an idea where we use a process of adding, essentially aerating the whiskey over a period of time. Then I'll be able to reduce the tannins and increase the mouthfeel of a blend. Or taking aspects from other industries. So the cognac industry, brandy and cognac, they essentially take a lot of their weird, funky sort of over seasoned elements and put them together into a vat. And then you teaspoon it in. It's also used in rum as well. So we're able to sort of increase a flavor note that's kind of this real, like I said it before, but like estery. So it's like that dark rum where you get
the Jamaican pot stilly, brioche, yeasty kind of rum.
Yeah, exactly. And we're able to augment a blend by adding some of that in. So that's really fun. What we're doing right now with one of our little tests, working with humidity. So putting stuff into humidity chambers to see if we're able to do like a reverse osmosis by bringing the alcohol down, but the level of liquid at the same. So you're almost bringing it down to bottling strength, but in the cask. That's all process based. But then working with incredible distilleries. There's a distillery in France that uses seaweed to smoke their malt that tastes incredible. It's like a briny. It's not fishy. It's seaside. Hot sand, rocks. Stunning. And so we've got probably 10 to 15 projects at any one time that I'm working on, just to try and look and feel around what the boundary of what whiskey can be. Because I really do think that coming into Woven, we want to be able to give people the ability to explore an entire category that is whiskey. And so working across techniques and different producers and different combinations is very exciting.
I would have a field day in your lab.
Yeah,
osmosis experiments, and like, oh wow, you've got me like fully occupied there. Anytime anyone mentions osmosis with liquids, I'm just kind of like, okay, you've got me. You've clicked my like geeky science switch now, so I need to kind of be in there in some way. That was incredible, Pete. I think people there's not a lot of comments kicking around. I think people are still kind of just playing with the thing in the glass because it's not something common. I do have one comment from Jeff, which says, "Does Peter have sleepless nights worrying that blends may not be popular?"
That's a very good question, isn't it? Because it's kind of one of those things that that we had worries about at the beginning. But I'll tell you what, I mean, your audience tonight and the people that engage with Whiskey Me is I don't need to explain that blends are great to them, because you guys are all already on that journey of going, well, blends don't need to be your 15 quid, 20 quid bottles at the bottom of a supermarket shelf that you mix with, a whiskey, Diet Coke, nay ice, nay fruit is an order. I think that blends, when done well and done with integrity and done with a curious mind, can be exceptional. And my piece when I speak to anybody is that within the single malt realm or even single cask realm, so at that top end, you look for depth, you look for complexity, you look for challenge and acceptance. You want to love it and you want to be challenged at the same time. And I think that a really great blend can deliver all of those. And I hope that we've made a lot of different expressions, and I hope that we've got something for everybody. And so and we're going to keep doing it. And I think that being able to blend means that we're able to also bring people into whiskey as well, because there's quite a lot of barriers to entry when you look at this category. And I think that blends are a good way to bring people, because if you look at something like specialist coffee or new wave wine, then you've got blending as a very accepted process, and the way that they talk about it is the same way that we talk about what we do. So I mean, it's a great question, something that I don't lose a lot of sleep over, because it's been maybe just too long. I'm just tired now, but
too long 24 hours.
Yeah. But no, it is a good question, because it's something that we keep sort of thinking about, but the acceptance so far has been very, very, very high. So,
I would agree. Yeah, I would 100% agree. Still yet to meet anyone who hasn't sat there and just, especially when I give this whiskey to friends, they've just kind of gone, "What is it?" And I'm like, just think about it, just sit with it for a while, tell me what you think it is in a bit. I do apologize. I ran slightly over with the timings on this, but I could ask both you and Andrew many a question for a many long time. So for the last sort of seven minutes, I'm sure we can bring Andrew back in to some degree here. And we have, my camera. Oh no, I'm back. There we go. Between the two of you, I mean, the last 2 months in a row, we've had, coincidentally, distilleries and companies that have had a weird amount in common. And I think between Woven and SPEY, soon to be renamed New Distillery, we've got two of the most, not necessarily contrasting, but certainly different styles, but you are still both experimental. One more so than the other in terms of like just going really far out there. Andrew, between the peated stocks you guys have and bourbon and sherry and port and all these very classical elements moving together in a world where you're surrounded by distilleries that outdate you by 100, 150, 200 years, and you're still kind of creating this very classical, easy drinking, but multifaceted style of whiskey across the whole board. And then Peter, we've just kind of got sky's the limit kind of thing. What can't we do? Which I think is quite an interesting thing for any company to kind of pitch themselves at, and something I'd like to see more of in the whiskey industry, in all honesty. I suppose we have with the heaviest peated whiskies in the world and things that just taste like 60% sherry rather than whiskey and all this kind of stuff. But Have either one of you managed to try like each other's brands at any points and that kind of thing? Or
We shared a table at the World Whisky Awards, so I'm sure that I think the Trilogio was on the table. I can't remember.
Was this last night? Or
No, it was must be about a year.
Oh no, was it about a year ago? Aye, it was last year. Yeah, you're right.
December last year, about 4 or 5 months ago. And I think you guys Woven won a big prize. Is that right? Yes, yeah. It's come back to me. Yeah, so yeah, we had the Trilogy on the table, but I can't remember. I had quite a few whiskies in it. I can't remember if I tried Woven, to be honest with you. Can't remember if it was, did you have one on the table? Do you remember?
No, we didn't. I forgot.
Yeah, I didn't. I've not tried Woven. I was like, I question myself there.
But I've certainly tried quite a lot of SPEY, and it's a distillery that you know we absolutely adore, because it's kind of the perfect whiskey for you know, being able to express a location. You know, it's a great Speyside. It's got those wonderful fruit-driven characteristics, and then the peated stuff is stunning. And then, you know, from can I say, Andrew, from a blender's point of view, you know, I'd love to be able to work with it. Honestly, I think that it would take on so much just by, you know, but I think that I could have love to. So
yeah, no,
you know,
we think it's a great
this tonight, but if you're interested,
yeah, I'll pass on the details to the people that do that in the company. But what I would say is that we do I think we do quite a traditional style for some of our products. We try to do them as well as we can. But also, I think we try to be quite experimental, not to the same scale as you, but it's things like Trilogia. It's quite a quirky expression to have the port and the peat together, because they're not that common. You don't see many of them. I think Talis will do one. Talis will Port Rui, and then
there's a couple of like Glen Scotias and the odd Springbank and that sort of thing, but it's not the most common combination in the world. Yeah.
So it's not the most common combination. We thought that's quite that's the kind of extreme we go to. So, but most of our stuff is pretty traditional to a degree. But yeah, port as well. The Tenny's been out for about 10 years, and port's been we were kind of pushing port when everyone else was pushing sherry. So we feel as though we're kind of a bit of a disruptor in our own wee space, but maybe not quite to the same degree as you, where the things you're mentioning are quite extreme that I've never even heard of. So yeah, I'm intrigued to hear how that goes. But yes, yeah, it's definitely two contrasting sort of companies here. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, again, I'll say Chairman's Choice PX tonight is a great sort of initial step for a lot of people who can then go and see the rest of SPEY, or they can jump to Woven after. So I don't know, you probably get a sort of an entry level style, but Chairman's Choice PX, I think, makes people just love whiskey. So I think they can go from there to any direction. So that's what we feel as though this whiskey's doing that job for the industry. We're not going to be like extreme flavors that's going to put people off for life. We feel that we want something that's going to be welcoming, and they can either stay with us, which we love, obviously, but also can move on to other brands where they want to maybe test different styles. But yeah, essentially, whiskey is a brilliant industry. So much going on. So yeah, it's great to be involved in it. And people like yourself are really on the extreme of what's happening in the world of whiskey.
Aye.
I think it's always good to have like you say, Andrew, like you have traditional elements, you have experimental elements. I feel every distillery does these days. It's almost impossible to not try and think, what can we do, you know? And then with Peter and his team and his co-owners, just kind of thinking, well, you know, everyone's got a sherry cask, a port cask, this kind of thing, you know. What kind of funky things can we find in Europe? And I think people forget about the amount of whiskey that's produced in Europe from Germany, France, Switzerland. Tried some absolutely bonkers whiskey from Switzerland that just tastes like pepperami. Everything's aged in like beer casks. I think it's Santis malts, I think is the brand.
That's right. It's
just bizarre products, you know.
Yeah.
But I had another point to make. I live for a Woven SPEY combination. That would be if you can open warehouse doors to the boys in Leith, I think that would be quite an interesting thing to bring out. The bottle would look incredible no matter what would happen. That kind of frosted glass and that big tall bottle you guys have at SPEY would be fantastic. But one thing I do need to bring up, because we had someone mention it before, in terms of what you're all trying tonight and what people will be trying when they watch this YouTube review later, I do apologize if you can hear my dog snoring very loudly next to me. We have 2,700 people are trying the SPEY Germans PX this month, and 1,800 are trying the Woven. So particularly large numbers across the board. Certainly leaning in the sense of more traditional, but I think that kind of still makes sense in the whiskey world, no matter which way you cut it. But huge numbers either way. Like it's holding steady at like 3,000 plus subscribers, and it clearly just seems to be getting bigger and bigger. But that's some big numbers for the two brands. But as she snores away next to me, hopefully none of you can hear that. Thank you very much, Peter and Andrew, for tonight. If we do have any additional questions, I'll be sure to source email addresses and things to get some answers to people and whatnot. But yeah, this is my third time hosting this, and two wonderfully contrasting styles just to like throw at people, get people talking. I think that's one of the most beautiful things you can do in the whiskey industry. But yes, thank you much to the two of you. I'm absolutely starving, so I'm going to go and get some food now.
I was just going to jump in before you say goodbye. You mentioned your dog snoring. So my dog, my family dog, just had pups. So two nights ago we had 10 pups. So here's one here.
Oh, wow! Oh my god!
Absolutely tiny. So there's 10 of them. We just got the labels for the band. What do you call them? Necklaces. All 10 different colours. So
we just like to
mention dogs. I thought I could hear something, but yeah, this one is this Bubbles? This is Bubbles. So he's 3 days old.
And I want to point out to the comments that the puppies are not for sale, but I can point out through the whiskey shop.
Buy a puppy, get a free bottle of SPEY? No, kidding on.
She's not a puppy, but she's very devastated. I just woke her up. But this is Thelma. She's a particularly loud dog, but I'll put her back down now. She's not particularly happy. I
was looking at my laptop thinking, what is something wrong with my laptop?
No, she's only built at right angles. She only really walks around like this all the time. But yes, I will say that was an unexpected surprise at the end there. But thank you very much to the two of you. Incredible contrasting collection of classical and very new styles. So that is an absolute wonder, and we only can think about what's coming up next month. But yeah, thank you so much to the two of you. Peter, I hope you get some wonderful sleep tonight. Andrew, I'll no doubt see you soon at some point in an email chain. But yes, thank you so much to the two of you and everyone who joined us. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
See you later.